My name is Jack Gallo, and this is Abolish the Electoral College. The purpose of this speech is to explain why the Electoral College is an outdated system for electing the President of the United States, and to advocate for its replacement with a national popular vote system. Introduction. The Electoral College is the United States system of electing its President. It is unique among the countries of the world, and much controversy surrounds its relevance and appropriateness in the 21st century. In my speech, I will demonstrate that the Electoral College is an antiquated and obsolete system that should be replaced. It will also explain both sides of the debate to this point. For context, I'm a political science major, and this topic is what I based most of my research on throughout my time in the major. The Electoral College system is flawed, anti-democratic, and anachronistic, and should be replaced with a system that better reflects the will of the American people. My points are that the Founding Fathers created the Electoral College out of distrust of the general American populace, that the Electoral College gives disproportionate power to voters in rural states, that the Electoral College also disincentivizes voter participation in solid states, that the Electoral College increasingly differs with the will of the general American populace, and finally, that the Electoral College is antiquated and should be replaced. First point. The Founding Fathers created the Electoral College out of distrust of the general American populace. The Founding Fathers, as depicted here, were educated patricians, distrusted the largely who distrusted the largely uneducated American public with important government decisions, and were afraid that the public would be swayed by toxic populism if given total democratic power. And so they established the Electoral College, a system that took power directly out of the hands of the American people and put it in the hands of electors. My second point is that the Electoral College gives disproportionate power to voters in rural states. The Electoral College assigns electoral votes based on their populations. It gives states a minimum of 3 electoral votes. As you can see here in this image, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Vermont have 3 electoral votes, the bare minimum number, as well as Alaska. This means that sparsely populated states like Wyoming have 1 electoral vote per 192,919 people, while populous states like New York have 1 electoral vote per 670,812 people. This means that a vote in Wyoming is worth over 3 times as much as a vote in New York. I do not believe that any person's vote should be worth more or less based on where they live. Third point. The Electoral College also disincentivizes voter participation in solid states. As electoral votes are apportioned based on who wins the state as a whole, except in Maine and Nebraska, voters in states that tend to vote consistently with one party feel less motivated to vote at all. As a result, it can be considered a foregone conclusion. For example, as you see here, a Democrat in Oklahoma has little reason to go to the polls when they know that their state will inevitably go for the Republican candidate. Likewise, a Republican voter in Hawaii has little reason to feel motivated to vote because they know that their state will go to the Democratic candidate. And so this system causes voters in these states to feel less compelled to go out and vote. My fourth point, the Electoral College increasingly differs with the will of the general American populace. Twice in the past 6 presidential elections, the candidate with the most votes has lost the election. As touched on in point 2, rising populations in coastal states and falling populations in rural states mean that the presidency is increasingly being determined by a declining minority of Americans. As you see here, we have the 2 elections in which the winner of the popular vote did not win the election, being George Bush in 2000 and Donald Trump in 2016. My final point, the Electoral College is antiquated and should be replaced. As has been demonstrated in the points mentioned above or before, the Electoral College was founded on an antiquated understanding of the American public and is becoming increasingly anti-democratic over time. In order to remain a representative democracy, the Electoral College must be reformed and ultimately replaced. In conclusion, my speech demonstrated that the Electoral College is an antiquated and obsolete system that should be replaced. The Electoral College system is flawed, anti-democratic, and anachronistic, and should be replaced with a system that better reflects the will of the American people. My reasons were that the Founding Fathers created the Electoral College out of distrust of the general American populace, that the Electoral College gives disproportionate power to voters in rural states, that the Electoral College also disincentivizes voter participation in solid states, that the Electoral College increasingly differs with the will of the general American populace, and finally, that the Electoral College is antiquated and should be replaced. I hope anyone listening found my speech informative, if not persuasive. I believe that eliminating the Electoral College is one of the biggest steps the United States can take toward becoming a more representative democracy in the 21st century. Thanks for listening.